Imagine waking up to a headline. Local businessman buys Eiffel Tower for scrap metal. Now imagine you're that businessman, and you just realize the seller didn't own it. That's the story of Victor Lustig, the man famous for selling the Eiffel Tower, and maybe even doing it twice. Welcome back to Sketch Figures, Finance, sketched simply. Today we're unpacking how a con artist almost turned one of the world's most famous landmarks into his personal side hustle. We'll walk through how he set up the scam, why smart people fell for it, and one simple rule you can use to protect your own money. If you like stories where money, psychology, and a tiny bit of chaos all collide, hit like and subscribe. Stick around to the end for a bonus greed filter you can use on any deal in under 10 seconds. Let's start with the punchline. In the 1920s, the Eiffel Tower was expensive to maintain and starting to rust. Newspapers in Paris were already debating whether this giant iron structure was worth the ongoing cost. Enter Victor Lustig. He reads a news article saying the tower is in bad shape and that some people think it might eventually need to be removed. In that tiny bit of public doubt, he sees a business opportunity, just not a legal one. Here's the basic setup of his product. The city is supposedly tired of paying for maintenance. The tower is made of over 7,000 tons of iron, worth a fortune as scrap. So the government, in his story, wants to quietly sell it to a scrap dealer. Lustig's innovation wasn't a new technology. It was a new story. He didn't just fake a document. He invented a believable scenario that fit the facts people already half knew. The tower was old, rusty, controversial, and expensive. Scams often start by borrowing real problems and attaching fake solutions to them. Now, how do you sell a landmark you don't own? You don't start on the street. You start at a luxury hotel. Lustig checked into the Hôtel de Crillon, one of the poshest hotels in Paris, France. From there, he posed as Deputy Director General of the Ministry of Posts and Telegraphs, a very official, very fake title. He knew two things make people trust you: symbols of authority, fancy letterhead, government seals, a big hotel, exclusivity, the feeling that you are being secretly chosen. So he had fake government stationery printed with official-looking seals, wrote formal letters inviting a handful of top scrap metal dealers to a confidential meeting at the hotel, framed it as a sensitive government project. Basically, you've been selected for a very special opportunity. At the meeting, he explained that maintenance on the tower was too costly. The public might be outraged, so it had to stay secret for now. The government wanted to sell the metal quietly to one trusted contractor. Then he delivered the emotional hook. He told them they had been chosen for their reputation as honest businessmen. This flatters their ego and makes them feel they must live up to the image. Imagine getting an email today saying, "You've been selected by the government for a confidential contract. Do not share this." Half your brain says, "Seems sketchy," and the other half says, "But what if it's legit and I miss out?" The more exclusive and secret a deal feels, the harder it is for your brain to walk away, even when it smells off. Out of the invited dealers, one man stands out: André Poisson, a relatively new scrap dealer trying to break into the big leagues. He wants respect, reputation, and a huge win to prove he belongs. Lustig watches the room like a poker player and picks Poisson as his mark, his main target. How he closes the deal: 1. Tour of the asset. He even arranges a guided tour of the tower, pointing to the iron, the rivets, the work that would be needed to tear it down. It made the whole thing feel real, like a property inspection. 2. The corrupt official move. Later, in private, Lustig confesses to Poisson that his government salary is not great. Translation: I'm underpaid and I expect a little something for making sure you get the contract. This is genius in a twisted way. In a world where people already assume officials are corrupt, asking for a bribe actually proves to Poisson that the deal is real. He thinks, this is how things are really done. 3. The money. Sources differ on the exact numbers, but accounts say Lustig walked away with the purchase price plus a bribe, around tens of thousands of francs, a fortune at the time, roughly hundreds of thousands of dollars in today's money. 4. The escape. Once the money clears, Lustig doesn't hang around to manage the demolition. He disappears to Austria, checks the newspapers every day, and sees nothing. No scandal, no police notice, just silence. Why silence? Poisson was too embarrassed to admit he'd bought a world-famous monument from a guy who didn't work for the government. The shame was so strong, he reportedly never went to the police. The con didn't end when Lustig got paid. It ended when the victim decided their pride was more important than justice. Quick pause here. If stories like this are helping you see money in a new way, tap like and subscribe. It tells the algorithm, more of this, less of the boring stuff. All right, back to the scammer who thought one Eiffel Tower sale wasn't enough. Here's where the "sold it twice" legend comes in. After the first scam, Lustig notices there's still no news story, no police hunt, nothing. So he thinks, if no one reported it the first time, maybe I can do it again. According to the Eiffel Tower's own official site and several historians, he came back and tried the same trick with a new batch of dealers. This time, one of them got suspicious and tipped off the police before money changed hands, and Lustig fled to the United States. Other retellings, including a popular Smithsonian feature and some books, still describe him as the man who sold the tower twice, folding the attempted repeat into the legend. So what's going on here? Fact, he pulled off one successful sale and got paid. Fact, he came back and tried again, but the second mark called the police. Story, he sold it twice. Sounds better than he sold it once and almost did it again. So that's the version that sticks. This is where greed meets storytelling, and not just his greed. Poisson wanted a shortcut to status. The second group of dealers wanted a shortcut to massive profit. Meanwhile, Lustig wanted to squeeze one more jackpot from the same trick. Behavioral finance writer Morgan Housel points out that we don't make financial decisions from spreadsheets. We make them from stories we like about ourselves. In this case, the stories were, I'm the businessman who won the biggest contract in France, and I'm the genius who can beat the system. Greed isn't just, I want more money, it's I want the story that comes with it, and that story can override common sense. After bailing on France, Lustig keeps working his talents in the United States. He runs the famous Romanian money box scam, selling a fake machine that supposedly prints real banknotes. Even manages to hustle gangster Al Capone out of several $1,000s and live to tell the tale by pretending to be an honest investor whose deal fell through. Capone, thinking he'd found one honest man in a crooked world, helps him with a sympathy payment. Eventually joins a large counterfeiting ring, pushing so much fake cash into circulation that U.S. Secret Service agents make him a priority target. In 1935, he's arrested after agents find plates and tens of thousands of dollars in counterfeit bills in a New York subway locker tied to him. He's sentenced to 15 years in Alcatraz, plus extra time for escaping custody once. He dies in 1947 in a federal prison hospital in Missouri. Even in death, he tried to blur the truth. Official records list him under one of his aliases, and biographers still debate details of his early life. But for our purposes, the key part isn't how he died. It's what his career shows us about how scams work and how people work. Technology changes, but the core code of a con, authority, urgency, secrecy, ego, barely moves. Let's pull this out of 1925 and back into your life. When we hear about a scam like this, it's easy to say, I'd never fall for that. But remember, the victim was a professional scrap dealer. He knew metal, contracts, and business. He wasn't uninformed, he was human. The same emotional levers that worked on him show up in modern scams. Fake authority, people impersonating tax offices, banks, or big brands. Secret opportunities, insider investments, hush-hush deals, early access. Time pressure, decide today or the opportunity disappears. Authors of the book Nudge, Richard Thaler and Cass Sunstein, talk about how tiny bits of friction, like forcing yourself to pause and check something, can protect you from automatic emotional decisions. So here's your one practical takeaway inspired by their work. If a deal asks for secrecy plus speed plus big upfront money, you must add friction before you act. That friction can be as simple as telling yourself, "I will not say yes on the first call," running it by one skeptical friend, Googling the company plus scam or complaints, calling the official organization directly using a number from their website, not from the email or message you got. You don't need to memorize every scam in history. You just need a rule that stops you when the pattern looks wrong. You can't control how convincing other people are, but you can control how fast you say yes. The story of Victor Lustig shows how believable stories, not complex math, drive both great scams and bad money decisions. Quick rewind. He spotted a real problem, the Eiffel Tower's expensive upkeep, and turned it into a fake secret sale, used authority and flattery to hook ambitious buyers, and rode that same playbook of trust, ego, and urgency until he ended up in prison. Today, this means red flag patterns matter. Secrecy, speed, and "you've been specially chosen" are the scammer's favorite tools, even in 2026. Add deliberate friction. Before sending big money, force a pause, second opinion, quick search, or a call to an official number. Shift your mindset. Instead of thinking, "I'd never fall for that," think, "What would it take for me to fall for something like this?" and protect that weak spot. If you enjoyed this breakdown, hit subscribe and tap the bell so you don't miss the next Sketch Figures story. For your next watch, check out our video on Alves dos Reis, the scammer who legally printed his own money. And as always, this video is for education only and isn't financial advice.